You're watching the Suspense Squad webcast, where authors interview authors. We're featuring Patricia Bradley, an award-winning writer whose newest book, Standoff, was released on May 5th. Our panel of authors includes Virginia Vaughan, Dana R. Lynn, Loretta Eidson, Darlene L Turner, Sammy A. Abrams, Hope Welburn, Patty Nicholas-Boyte, and myself, Shannon Redmon.
Today we're welcoming Patricia Bradley. I'm going to read her bio. Patricia Bradley is the award-winning author of the Memphis Cold Case novels and the Logan Point series. She's an ACFW Carroll Award finalist and winner of the Inspirational Reader's Choice Award, a Daphne DeMauro Award, and Touched by Love Award, co-founder of Aiming for Healthy Families, and a member of American Christian Fiction Writers and Romance Writers of America. Patricia makes her home in Mississippi. Welcome, Patricia.
Thank you. I'm looking forward to this.
So tell us about your new book.
Well, this is the new book, and let me see where you can see it. And it is set down around Natchez on the Natchez Trace. The Natchez Trace runs from Natchez to Nashville, and I live about halfway, about 20 miles from me, maybe 30. I envisioned writing it up here because I knew the area, but my editor fell in love with Natchez, and so that's where it was, which I'm really glad because it gave me a chance to do a research trip, and I fell in love with Natchez. They are different. They have a whole different organization. They're not the same as the National Park Service Rangers. They're a part of it, but they're separate. And so that was a challenge to me because the story needed to take place on Natchez Trace Park land and not National Park Service land. It's real weird. It was real weird. In this story, Brooke unfortunately finds her father after he's been shot, and she's determined to find out who killed him. And that brings in Luke Faraday, who they had a relationship where they in fact he had given her a ring, but she had some issues and she ran, and that part of the story is why she ran. So ran away, why she broke it off, and he left, and he is now undercover, but she doesn't know that. So that causes a lot of conflict.
Okay, well, let's ask some questions. Loretta, you want to start?
Sure, I'll start. Okay, my question for you, Pat, is when you're researching the location where your scene is going to be taking place and you need to ask local authorities questions, how do you present yourself to them, and what specifically do you look for in those areas for your setting? And are the authorities, do they share their information willingly, or are they kind of apprehensive?
Well, one time maybe a mechanic, when I asked how to make a car wreck and kill somebody, he was a little, but other than that, I have never had anyone to tell me to be apprehensive. They don't always want me to use their name in the book, like for the Park Service Rangers, they don't want their names used. But no, I have no problem asking anybody anything.
Dana, do you want to go next?
Sure. Hey, Pat.
Hey.
Congratulations on your new book coming out.
Thank
it's
you.
really
I'm
exciting. So I remember years ago talking to you at ACFW, and we had talked about how, the path to trying to become a writer and actually publishing a book is not always as easy as people think. I was just wondering, in the years between when you were trying to become a writer and when you were finally published, what career choices or what experiences did you have that you feel made you a better writer?
Well, part of it is I'm an older writer. And of course, I know you can't tell that, but and I have a lot of life experiences. So, and I've dealt with a lot of different people. I've met a lot of crooked cops. I've met a lot of good cops, good politicians, crooked politicians. So I have a wealth of information up here. And it just shows up in my stories. So, and actually my career before I became a writer, I taught abstinence in the schools. And my mother said, how are you going to make kids go to school? Because she thought I was saying absence.
Darlene, you want to go next?
Sure.
What's your question for Pat?
Pat, it's good to
Hey.
see you.
Good to see you.
Congratulations on your book.
Thank
I can't
you.
wait to read it. I have had this question asked me a few times, so I wanted to find out what your answer is for this question. Where do you get your ideas for your books?
I want to say thin air, which is not fair. I mean, they come from everywhere. This particular story came because I need to pitch a proposal to the editors at Revell.
Mhm.
And I just started, well, what if this, what if? But my ideas, I get them from TV, I get them from reading, and then sometimes they just come to me. I mean, it's just, they just, an idea pops into my head, and I thought, ooh, well, what if this happened? So, and basically that's where my ideas come from.
Oh, good. Thank you.
Sammy, do you want to go next? What's your question for Pat?
Sure. How you doing, Pat?
I'm good. I'm missing going places, but
Yeah, tell me about that.
yeah.
Okay, so for anybody who has ever started writing, we all have different processes. What is your writing process when you from start to finish?
Well, right now I'm actually putting together a book that's not with Revell. I'm actually trying to write a proposal for Love Inspired Suspense. And because I would like to have a short book to write in between a big book. And I'll use that as an example. Is I had an idea about, and I started fleshing it out. And first thing I have to do though is know my characters. I have to know why this crime at this particular time. Why not 10 years ago? Why not again? In most of the books, a lot of my books have cold cases. So even in this series, there will be some cold cases. And so it's, well, why this crime now? Why didn't it happen before? And I have to figure that out. And I lay down, I figure that out. I figure out who my characters are, figure out what their goal is. I'm not a plotter. I've tried it. I was originally, but now I'll reach a point where I just have to start writing. And that's basically where I am now on this one. I don't really have it fleshed out. I know how it's going to end pretty well, but that's always subject to change. But I know what the crime is. I know why it happened, and I know how the hero will play into it. Then I'll lay down the suspense line, because I write romantic suspense, but romance is not easy for me to write. It's much easier for me to kill a character off than it is to get him together with the love interest. So
Yeah.
it is.
Yeah.
We are suspense writers, really. But you want I do like the relationship aspect of it. But most of my books happen so quickly over such a short period of time that it's really hard to work romance in it. Because if one book was 4 days, the length was 4 days. I think that was Justice Delayed. And there's not a lot of time for romance. I give them a promise of a happily ever after. That's basically how I do it. I have to know my characters first and the why. Why now? Crime of the crime. I know what the crime is.
Okay, Hope, do you want to go next? What's your question?
Sure. And Pat, I think I may be the only person here who has actually ever met you in person before. It's been wonderful to meet you and delightful to listen to you answer these questions for us. I'm excited about your new series. It sounds super interesting. So I would like to know, you mentioned having an earlier career before you started writing and being an older writer. What was it that made you want to get into writing? What was the spark that made you say, yeah, I'm going to do this? And, like how long did it take you from that moment until you actually got published?
When I was 35, I couldn't sleep. I don't know if you've ever experienced that, but I would lay awake at night looking at the ceiling. And one night as I'm staring at the ceiling, this man appeared in my vision. And he was standing at a window, and behind him were smokestacks, like it was maybe in wherever, Pittsburgh, wherever the smelting furnaces are. And he turned and he looked at me and he said, "This isn't the way my life was supposed to turn out." And I thought, oh, wow. Because up to that point, I had always been a reader. I read anything I could get my hands on. I read James Michener. I read Mary Higgins. I read anything. I read the back of cereal boxes. So, I always thought I could write a book, but I never thought I would write a book. It just wasn't until that. And it was like he wouldn't leave me alone until I started writing. Well, I didn't write his story, and that still has to be written, but other characters came. I wrote a short story for Woman's World, and they asked for 2,500 words. So of course I sent 3,500. That should automatically mean she should have automatically put that in an envelope in the SASE and sent it back to me, but she didn't. She loved the story. She cut 2,000 words out of it and published it. Woman's World published the very first thing I ever wrote.
Okay, Patty, you want to go ahead?
Sure. Well, I like Hope. I have not actually met you in person, and it's wonderful to meet you.
Good to see
And
you.
I'm excited to read your book.
Thank you.
So my question is that on the Natchez Trace Parkway, and you have the Rangers who are in there, and she wants to follow in her father's footsteps. Do you have someone that you followed in their footsteps on your path to become a writer?
Well, I had a mentor, or actually two. I had Susan May Warren and Rachel Hawk, and they are fabulous teachers. I went to the first 4 Deep Thinker retreats, and from the first one to the second one, I won Most Improved Writer. I would take what we learned there and go home and all that year work on it. I went in 2010 and 2011. I worked on what we did on 2010. 2011, 2012, I'm working on it. In 2012 is when I finally finished Shadows of the Past and sent it to Mary Sue Seymour. And she offered to represent me. And then she more or less broadcast it to about 20 editors, 20 publishers, and several responded. They were Lonnie, my editor, the acquisition editor who really actually bought it, said anyone who could make her forget she was flying, because she flew from Michigan to Dallas, because that's where ACFW was that year. That was the year I finaled in the Genesis, and said if they could make her forget she was flying, she wanted to buy their book. But Susan May Warren and Rachel Hawk taught me more. They taught me what I was missing. They told me what I was doing right, and then they showed me what I needed to do, what I was doing wrong, and how to fix it.
That's really interesting, and I love Susan May Warren. She's amazing.
Oh, they share so much of knowledge. I still am part of my book therapy. And when if I have to write, I hardly ever have to write a synopsis anymore, but that may change. And so I go over and I look at the library and how do I do this? And every book I start is like, now, how did I do this? I know I can do it, but now how did I start it?
Shannon, you want to ask your question?
I'd love to. So I haven't met you either in person. So congratulations on your book, Standoff. I just want to say that, get that name out there for your book. So here where I live in Asheville, North Carolina, we have something called the Blue Ridge Parkway. And you wrote about the Natchez Trace Parkway, which I had never heard of before. So I was very intrigued to know there was another parkway out there that was famous, that went all the way from Mississippi to Nashville. So that was pretty cool. So tell us what you look for when you select a good setting for your story, and how you manipulate that setting to cause problems for your character.
I'm always looking for a place to hide a body. Definitely. That's how I got lost. Any place you go in Natchez, it is so rich in history, and most of the places have ghosts, which I don't use a ghost, but on the Natchez Trace, there used to be robbers back in the early 1800s, and I mean, it was a very dangerous place to be. Andrew Jackson used it to go from Nashville to Natchez and on down to New Orleans. He moved his troops on the trace, which that when you look at it, that's amazing because it's not as wide as a 2-lane road. Just Meriwether Lewis died up near Nashville, not too far. Well, it's maybe 50 miles from Nashville, but and that they never, until recently, they really never knew whether he was murdered or if he committed suicide or what happened. Emerald Mounds that has some of the. It's where it's an Indian burial.
Yeah, and that kind of brings me to my question too, which you kind of touched on, which was, what was your inspiration to set a series on the Natchez Trace when you live so close to it?
I think she thought that Natchez would bring a different flavor, which it would. I mean, you've got a small city there, and you have restaurants, and it's easier to set it there rather than to set it. I mean, where you have a community. Most of the Trace is very isolated. You don't have phone service on most of it, unless you're near a big town like Jackson or. I mean, you go miles and miles and miles, and it's just you and the road, and it's not really traveled a lot. I don't travel it at night because I think it'd be dangerous. One thing, there are a lot of deer. I have traveled at night and had deer jump across the road in front of me, and that's the last time I'll be on the Trace at night. My next story, I mean, the very next series I plan to write, if this virus doesn't kill everything, is going to be in a made-up town near the coast. And it's going to be about a female sheriff.
But there's still more books to come in this series, though, right?
Yes. I have one. My final editor has the second book, and I'll be getting edits back from it sometime this summer, I'm assuming. It's set at Mount Locust on the Trace, which was the oldest inn on the Trace. It's still there.
Well, it's been so interesting talking to you.
It's been fun.
I'm so glad that you came on with us. I can't wait to get the book. It releases officially on May 5th, right?
Right.
So it'll be out before somebody sees this recording.
Be out Tuesday. I love to talk writing.
And dead bodies.
And dead bodies.
Gotta hide them.